My name is Boxie Singh Dosanjh. I was born in Westminster Royal Columbian Hospital in January 15, 1930.
Okay.
And
when did your parents come to Canada?
my dad came in 1907. And then he worked here for 20 years. He was married and he worked here 20 years before he went to India to get my mother.
Okay, and what was his village in India? Where was he born?
He was born in district Jalandhar, village Dosanjh.
Okay.
Yeah. When he came from India, all the Punjabi people used to work in sawmills, and he couldn't get a job at that time because there was no vacancies. So he went to California for 1 year. And then after a year, he had a cousin or somebody here, and he phoned him that there's a big mill opening up here, and there'll be a lot of job opportunities to come back here if you want to come back to Canada. Then he came back, and then he started working at Fraser Mills. It's in district of Coquitlam in New Westminster, and he worked there for 20 years before he went back to get my mother in 1928. He was from village and post office in Condola, Clan, and district Noormal in Jalandhar district.
Wait, tell us about it now.
He got married before he came to India. He was quite young. Yeah, he was only 18 when he got here, and he was already married. Then he came here and he waited that long, and then went back to get her in 1929.
Very nice.
When, as she told me, when she was coming back from India, it's a funny thing. She said that if I was 2 months late, you would be Indian born. She got pregnant on the way here.
And she came by boat?
Boat, ship. It took 30 days, 31 days from Calcutta to Vancouver.
Okay.
Then I was born, and then I don't know. Then we lived in Fraser Mills, and he was working. That I grew up in Fraser Mills, went to school there in Coquitlam, and then for 6 years, and then I went to the high school in New Westminster, was a different area.
Of Indian background, so let's hear that story.
Like a lot of Punjabi kids didn't want to go to school. After about grade 8 or 9, they would drop out, and I chose to keep going. My dad said, "You can't quit school. You got to keep on going. You have to go to university." And so I went to grade 12, and then I dropped out of grade 12 too. Our high school was in New Westminster on Royal Avenue, Duke of Connaught High School, and there was no Punjabi children there except one Punjabi girl and myself.
What was her name?
Her name was Naseeb Kaur.
You were only 2 Indo-Canadian Indians in that school. Was there issues in the school? Tell us a little bit about your school life, a little bit.
Actually, I was well liked because I had a car. My dad bought me a car when I was 14, and I took my car to school and made a lot of friends. They used to want to ride, and I used to drive there, and had a lot of fun, and they were really down to earth, no discrimination or anything. So they were well liked.
And what did you do after you finished high school?
Then I got married, and that didn't last very long. then I went to work in a plywood mill. That was J.R. Murray Limited in Marpole in Vancouver, and I worked there for 22 years. And then in 1972, I wanted to get a leave of absence to go to India, and they said, you can't give you a leave of absence, you got to quit and we'll hire you back. But I said, might as well quit. And then when I got back, I started at Scott Paper. I said, I'll try something else. Just like a village of its own. It was quiet and
Now tell us about your uncle and auntie's life in Fraser Mills and what they were experiencing, the difficulties they faced.
Well, actually, they didn't go shopping or anything. They just worked hard, long hours, and they grew their own food, whatever they could get. They just had
Canned them.
they canned them during the summer and ate them in the winter. And then when the stuff like flour for roti or something, they would just order it from a store in New Westminster, and they would deliver it every month or so. And that's what they were just like a lonely life, hardworking, long hours.
Uncle, do you remember the time when the Japanese and the Chinese also lived in Fraser Mills? What was that like? You were saying it's more like a village.
Yeah, actually, it was like a village. The Japanese were in one part, and the Chinese were in the middle, and the Punjabi people were near the banks of the Fraser River, and we had a gurdwara there, and they were all together. They would have their functions on the weekends, and the biggest thing was when Mehboob Singh got hung.
Yeah.
They cremated him not too far away from our house.
Were you
in the
there?
back.
Were you there at the time?
No, that
No.
was in 1914.
Oh yes, that happened a long time ago. Yes.
That was before my time.
I know, I forgot. Being in New Westminster, what was New Westminster like in those days?
It was quiet. We had the tram, streetcars from Fraser Mills to no buses, just real streetcars. And it was quiet, and the kids didn't have too much to do, just play with bikes or marbles.
What was life in the Gurdwara like at Fraser Mills?
It was good. Everybody used to get together on the weekend, and people would come from Vancouver, New Westminster, as far as Abbotsford. They had special functions in different gurdwaras. It's not like now, like Baisakhi. Now everybody has it. It was only in Victoria, and we had the big one was for Mehboob Singh, and the Babara,
Council.
that was in Vancouver. They had it all separated.
Was the Gurdwara in a house or was it a specially built Gurdwara?
It was specially built. My dad got them to build it. It was just next to our house. And it was about, I would say, a building about 80 by 100 or so. It was a big building, and the cookhouse was separate. People would go to the temple, and they would walk about a block to go to the where they ate, the langar hall.
The Langar Hall was far away from the Gurdwara.
Yeah, and that's where all the people lived. Were working, the bachelors, like in bunk houses, and that langar hall was right in the middle of all that.
How many families were there? Most of them were bachelors. How many families were living in Fraser Mills?
Our Punjabi families here were only 5.
Do you remember their names?
Yeah, shall I say?
Yes.
And there was Lal Singh and Pratap Kaur. Got the Deol. Their last name was Deol, and they had one daughter and three sons. So the name there, Ajab, Jebo, the Ajab Kaur, and then there's Bobby and Ronnie. And then our family was Duran Singh, Mahakaur, and Boxie, and Minder Kaur, and Jito, my younger sister. And other Kabul Singh and Isar Kaur, they had two sons, Pajo, they used to call him Pajo, and Mahinder. And the other one was Shiv Singh and his Kishan Kaur, and the oldest daughter was Mito. She was 2 years older than me. And then they had a brother. He was, they used to call him Uda. I forgot his real name. And they used to call him Uda. And then was Asi and another Charno. Charno died quite young. And that was that family. And there's another one, Spoon Kaur and Dalip Singh, and their daughter was Indo.
That's it.
Yeah.
And there was lots of bachelor men.
Bachelor men, about 2 big sheds full of bachelors. And
Cookhouse.
then they had a cookhouse. When we used to come from school, they would call us and say, "Come and eat over here." And we got this made, we got this made, you know. It was like a big family, you know.
When did Fraser Mills shut down?
Well, actually, it didn't shut, it just changed hands, and they tore everything out in 1948. Everything was moved, all the Maharadi Beard and everything was moved to Queensboro. We picked up all, I still remember picking up all the rugs. There were pieces joined together, and we put them on a big truck and we brought them over here. And they called a big bus for the Maharadi Beard. And they had a big celebration in Queensboro that they got everything from Fraser Mills. And then we bought 6 acres in Queensboro. We had to move out too in 1948. And so we bought 6 acres, and my mother said, "No matter what, I want to buy a house near the Gurdwara."
So she stayed there.
So she stayed, you ended up staying near in Queensboro.
In Queensboro.
And the Gurdwara in Queensboro, was it a small house?
It was like a small house on Boyne Street, and then she would go walking. She liked just have a good walk, walking distance.
In the morning,
In the
early in the
morning,
morning.
in the
they used to go do
evening.
seva.
And do seva and all that.
So it was a gentle life, a
Gentle
simple life.
And then when
Friendly, very friendly. Everybody was very
and then when my sister got married in 1954, we subdivided one lot for her to live, and we got this Oak Street. They were building the Oak Street Bridge. We got this house moved there on that lot, and she lived in that house. And then after about 4 years or 5 years, they wanted to sell. He said, "We're going to sell." So a man from Italy bought it, and he stayed our neighbors for about 6 or 7 years, and then
Jatar Singh.
Jitar Singh and Ranjan Kaur bought it from them.